Hello, welcome to Lisa's Law April webinar. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar regarding houses in multiple occupation. I'm your speaker today, Felix. We hope you will find the presentation useful and informative. If you have any questions, there will be time for you to type in the chat section of this meeting at the end. Content page. The content of our webinar today will cover most of the knowledges you will need to know about houses in multiple occupation, such as legal definition, landlord's responsibility and obligation, how a multiple occupation license, right to rent, relevant statutes, law, etc. Lisa's Law is a law firm founded in 2012. It's situated in London, Zone 1 area. And the team is multilingual. They speak ranges of languages. Lisa's Law does provide services in areas such as immigration law, litigation, family law, private clients, commercial conveyancing, residential conveyancing, and business law. We have our mobile app, which you can download for free right now. As you can see, the app to launch a new inquiry, scan over documents, check on your case. I'm Felix once again. I qualified in 2008 as a solicitor. I have experience in business law, negotiations of contracts, housing law, employment, and I speak English, Igbo, and Italian. Part one of our discussion, definition of houses in multiple occupation. Your home is in multiple occupation if the following occurs. 1, at least 3 tenants live there, forming more than 1 household. 2, you share toilet, bathroom, or kitchen facilities with the other tenants. 3, at least 5 tenants live there, forming more than 1 household, and you share toilet, bathroom, or kitchen facilities with others. And part 2 of our discussions, household. A household is either a single person or members of the same family who live together. A family may comprise of the following people: A, married couple living together; B, relatives, for example, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, etc. And C, step-parents and stepchildren. And part 3 of our discussion, landlord's legal obligation and responsibility. The landlord obligation is to reduce fire risk by ensuring that property are properly safe. 2, they ensure that the people living in share houses have adequate facilities. 3, annual gas safety checks are carried out. 3, electrics are checked every 5 years. Ensure that the property is not overcrowded. Provide enough cooking and bathing facilities for the number living there. Ensure that the communal areas and shared facilities are clean and in good repairs. Provide enough rubbish bins and bags. And part 4 of our discussion, landlord's responsibility for repairs in a house in multiple occupation. The landlord is responsible for any repairs in communal areas of your home. The landlord is also responsible for repairs of the following: 1, the structures and exterior of the house, including the walls, window frames, and gutters. 2, the water and gas pipes, the electrical wiring, basins, sinks, baths, and toilets, fixed heaters or radiators, water heaters or boilers. And part 5 of our discussion, housing multiple occupation license. Your landlord must give a license or get a license from the council in the following circumstances. One, housing multiple occupation has 5 or more unrelated people living in it. 2, the housing in multiple occupation has 2 or more separate households living there. Some councils require all private landlords to get a license. And part 6 of our discussion, when houses in multiple occupations do not need to be licensed. Houses do not need license if they are managed or controlled by the following: a housing association, a cooperative, a council, a health service, a police authority, or a fire authority. And part 7 of our discussion, duration of a license. Licenses usually last for 5 years, but some councils do grant them for shorter periods. When deciding whether or not to issue or renew a license, the council check the following: A, the property meets an acceptable standard. For example, you may check whether or not the property is large enough for the occupants and it is well managed. B, the landlord is a fit and proper person. And part 8 of our discussion, minimum bedroom size for licensed houses in multiple occupation. If your landlord applied for or renews a house in multiple occupation license on or after 1st October 2018, bedroom sizes must be at least A, 6.5 square meters for a person aged 10 or over, and B, 10.22 square meters for 2 people aged 10 or over. C, 5.64 square meters for a child under 10 years old. If a room is used as a bedroom and your landlord does not meet the size required, the council can allow your landlord up to 18 months to comply with the rules. The landlord may make structural alterations to make the room bigger or take steps to end your tenancy during the term. And part 9 of our discussion, right to rent. Landlord must carry out a right to rent immigration check on any adult living in the property whose agreement began on or after 1st February 2016. Part 10 of our discussion, landlord's penalty for not having houses in multiple occupation license. Landlord can be fined and ordered to repay up to 12 months rent if you live in a house in multiple occupation that should be licensed, but it was not. Apply for a rent repayment order within a year of houses in multiple occupation being unlicensed using form under the Housing and Planning Act 2016. Any housing benefit or universal credit you have used to help you pay your rent can be reclaimed by the council. And part 11 of our discussion, the statutes or law. Part 2 of the Housing Act 2004 is very important. And part 2, Housing and Planning Act 2016. Section 40 of the Housing and Planning Act 2016 confers power on the first-tier tribunal to make a rent repayment order when a landlord has committed an offense to which this chapter applies. This is just a reminder about our free mobile app, which is available now for your iPhone and Android devices. You can see all the information about it on your screen. Also, feel free to follow our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. For more information, free legal knowledge and events. Thank you for joining us. If you have any question, now is the time to post them in chat section of this meeting. We will now start answering your questions. Thank you, Jay, for your question regarding what is the cost for applying for home and multiple occupation license. Usually, the application is to be made to the council, and the range of the cost for the license is within the ranges of £500 to £115. Richard, thank you for your question. A child of 5 years old will be counted to be maximum number permitted. I think we are looking at you're talking about the size, a situation where you have the size of the room, because for a particular child, we're looking at the range which the statute has provided in terms of the diameter of the size of the room. So for instance, if it is maybe 5.64 square meters for a child, that can fall within the range. But if it is lower than that, then the nature of the inconveniences that will cause will become an issue which will be infringing with the provided dimensions of a suitable room range. So for a particular one, it is a child, even though the age will not really matter, even though it's 10 and below, that will not be much of an issue. I think the main thing is that within the age range of 10, for that bracket of maybe 5.64 square meter, then that would be suitable. But if you have maybe more than 2 people sharing, regardless of the age, then that become issue of overcrowding, which is the main thing the housing in multiple occupation is trying to avoid. So you avoid the situation of overcrowding. I hope this tries to answer your question, not necessarily the age, because if you look at for that, within the 10 and below, then that child will be able to live comfortably within that dimension that falls in the age bracket for the size. Okay, thank you, Mi, for your question. Your question is how the landlord checks the prospective tenants. For example, if a landlord is to let his property, the landlord can, maybe through his estate agents, ask the prospective tenant to provide proof of ID. And they can also check if the tenant has the necessary residence permits in the UK. So that will be something the agents will look at, because the landlord is ensuring that they conform to the legislation as not to breach it. So that's a way, because it will be something that documents will be presented to the agent, the letting agent, and the agents will look at the documents and ensure that it conforms in terms of the person having maybe a leave to remain in the UK. in order not for the landlord to fall foul of the law. I hope that answers your question, Lee. Richard, thank you for your question. For example, you said 3 students plus a mother with her child of 5 years, the total number would be counted to be 5 persons or 4.5. And if 5, the license is needed. If 4.5, no need of license. I think that is not that the point. Let's try to make this. I would like to use this opportunity to clarify the essence of the license. The essence of the license is to ensure that the property is not overcrowded. You have a situation where if you have more than 2 households living in the property and sharing facilities, the essence is to ensure that the facilities are available. For example, the toilet, bathroom would be suitable. If you have 6 households or 4 households sharing toilets and bathroom, that would be very inconveniencing if the landlord has not taken steps to obtain license, because that would be a situation where if the council becomes aware of this situation, a notice can be sent to the landlord to address the issue, because the families are placed in very difficult situation. Let's give you an example. If somebody is suffering from diarrhea within the family, and you only have a toilet for 3 to 4 households, and the person wants to use the toilet, there will be issue of people queuing up, and that will not be the proper situation, ideal situation for renting premises. So the license is to enable the landlord to ensure that tenants have a proper, suitable facilities for them to use to avoid situation where there is overcrowding and insufficient facilities for every tenant in the property. I think that's the essence of the license. Jean, your question is, do I apply the license first, or do I install the smoke alarm before I apply? I think from the outset, you ensure that the landlord is to ensure that the smoke alarm is working. That is very, very important, because that is part of the obligation. And the essence of that is to avoid fire disaster, because if the alarm is not installed and you have a situation where there is a smoking of fire producing smoke, and there is no alarm system to pick it up in order to alert those, that will be falling short of the regulations. So it's important, first of all, to ensure if you're a landlord and you're renting to your tenants, you take the trouble to put up the facilities properly to make sure that that keeps the premises safe. Regarding the question, Sally, about how many smoke alarms are required to install in a house in multiple occupation, I think it depends. For example, if you have a situation where you have 2 households in the house in multiple occupation, a smoke alarm system that covers the premises would be sufficient, maybe, for example, in the kitchen area. But where you have maybe bed seats, then and if the bed seats are divided, if you have 2 or more bed seats in the property, then it will be reasonable to have the number of alarms, fire alarms, that is commensurate to the bed seats, maybe to cover maybe the kitchen facilities that is provided to avoid any fire alarm or fire disaster from arousing. So there is no specific smoke alarm fixed by the housing and multiple occupation regime, but it's something that is practical. You can assess it to ensure that those alarms are made available practically. Okay, if there are no further questions, I think we can okay, how long can I usually apply for HMO? Usually you can apply for HMO. It depends, for example, if you are a landlord and you intend to engage in a renting that will involve more than one household, then it's from the outset, you make out the plan to ensure that you are compliant by applying to your council. It's a plan the landlord has to decide from the outset, given his intention that he wants to rent a premise whereby you have more than one household. So it's something that can be done from the outset. Then another way to look at it is, for example, if you're a tenant, and you happen to realize that your landlord does not have a license, then within the 12 months of the knowledge, when you have the knowledge of these 12 months, you can approach your landlord to let him know your concerns. And then maybe by way of pre-action protocol, you can make him realize that you have this concern. And if he does not address it properly, then you may make him realize that you may take the matter further by applying to the property chamber first year tribunal, because it's the property first year tribunal that deals with issues of this nature in terms of repayment of rent, because it's an issue that will engage maybe a penalty if the landlord is found to have committed an offense under the statute. So that is another way you look at it. You look at it from the landlord perspective, or you look at it from the tenant perspective. I hope this give you a clear indication, Zoe, regarding your questions. Thank you, Sam, for your question. Your question is whether the parking space is a requirement to apply for HMO. I think that's not really the substance of the HMO, because the HMO is looking more of the suitability of the accommodation in terms of health and safety of the occupants of the property. So the parking arrangement or parking space is not a primary concern of the HMO. Sally, do we need to install emergency fire exit door? Is that compulsory? Now, this is an important element for health and safety for a landlord to consider in case of any disaster, in terms of maybe fire outbreak or other major emergencies, because with the exit door it gives opportunity for people in a state of emergency to be able to evacuate the premises for the occupants to be safe. So it's something that is reasonable in terms of good practice for a landlord to consider, that emergency fire exit is made available in the building, because once again, is the safety of the tenants or the occupants that is primary regarding HMO. I hope that has tried to answer your question, Sally. I think another thing maybe to make an addition, whether it's compulsory. I think it is in as much as you are renting to people. That's the element you have to look at. It's compulsory. It's very important when you are renting. The safety of the people is important for you to look at. If there are no more questions, I would like to use, okay, is that Sally again? My house have a front door and back door. Is that good enough? Well, I think let's talk in terms of practicality, that you have a front door. Yes, that's understandable. And then you have a back door. But the thing is that you have to keep it compliant. Like if there's a need for the deliberate attempt to provide all that would be necessary in emergency situation. For example, you can have fire extinguishers available. Those things are practical in terms of safety, that you have those things available within the range. And then when people evacuate, if it is through the back door, that they will be able to land in a safe area that will be further away from the building, in case if it's a situation of fire. So you have the back door, and it should be a way that if the back door can lead people to land in an area that is safer, that will keep them far away from any danger in an emergency situation, because that is more of a practicality, a practical thing to consider. Let's take 2 more questions, then we can stop for the day. Okay, if there are no further questions, I would like to use the opportunity to thank you for attending the webinar. We will be having more of free events like this. Many thanks, and hope to see you soon. Thank you for joining us. Thanks.